Good morning, Ginny. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a very busy day. I know you're off to Las Vegas in a couple of hours.
Not for gambling.
No.
Okay.
Maybe you're placing a big bet on a part of your business. Maybe that's part of it. Let's start with the news today about a new deal for Watson, your cognitive computing, your famous cognitive computing element. It's a deal with GM for Onstar to introduce Watson, the Watson technology into Onstar. Can you explain how it works and how this is going to change the driving experience for us?
Yes, this is, so you all put a story out today on this, and actually the press release was, let's see, Onstar, hello Watson, and so this kind of idea, and it's a good example, I think, of where we focused, because it is really Watson becoming the AI platform for business. And so this goes back about, maybe a year, a little more than a year. Mary and I were together, and we did Mary Barra, and we did a session together envisioning what could the driving experience be like differently if you really looked at cognitive computing, because a number I didn't realize, people spend 37,000 hours in their lifetime in their car. And so if that could be more productive, made more useful.
More in LA, I imagine.
You're probably right. That's on average.
That's in a week in LA.
You were probably right. So on average. And so what we did was with Onstar, which we've worked with GM on Onstar for a good number of years, and they've got the most connected vehicles. So the idea is it's permissioned, and they have billions of pieces of data. So both about the car and then the interactions that they already have from Onstar. So it is permissioned, it's private, and then joining us in this announcement are people like ExxonMobil, MasterCard, there's a Parkopedia for parking spots, etc. And so it's very customed and tailored and learns from how you behave and what you do. So everything from you have children reminding you to pick up your child's prescription on the way home, to it knows your coffee, it orders it for you, and gets smarter and smarter from all these interactions, to things like how to help you drive better, etc. So this will roll now with the 2017 cars already. So they're new cars that are coming out for 2017. That will be the beginning. Plus, they have an app. I sound like I'm doing a commercial for GM, but so it'll be all their brands. And this is part of. I was just telling Jerry back. I said, Watson will now really by the end of this year, it's hundreds of millions of lives that it touches through our clients, and we're on track for 1 billion by the end of next year.
So, talking about cars, technology is obviously transforming driving. We have autonomous vehicles, we have ride sharing. You're doing things like this. The whole experience of driving a car is technologically a world away from where it was just 20 years ago. Is there more for IBM and Watson to do there? And I'm wondering particularly about autonomous driving. I mean, everybody's getting into whether it's some of the technology companies, the traditional car manufacturers. Is this something IBM is looking into?
This is we have got something going on with almost every car maker on this topic, and they range. So with Daimler, we did Car2Go, which is a ride sharing, not ride sharing, but a shared vehicle kind of thing. But it goes through all the way to Honda, which is on the line prediction, to painting for one of the other automakers. So the cognition, I think you've got to think about it, is not just for autonomous, it's for every part, and it's true for every company, by the way. So this idea, and it's part of why we use the word cognitive, that you become a cognitive business. You don't just do AI, it's much broader than that.
Explain that, would you? What's the difference between cognitive computing and artificial intelligence?
Yes, I do get asked that, because well, why don't you just say, and even I just said a second ago, we're becoming the AI platform for business. So my background is a computer science, so I'm very technical in my background. So cognitive, AI is a piece of cognitive. But I was saying to Jerry, there's 50 other engines and statistical engines that go as part of this. As well, natural language, vision, so you're able to actually, whether it's x-rays, movies, and it's not just picture something in them, you understand the context of what's in it. So these systems have that, as well as probably the biggest thing is they have domain knowledge. So a doctor, a journalist, a lawyer, a teacher, they actually are taught in a domain, and they act differently because of that. So just like if I had issues with cancer, I wouldn't go to you, a journalist, if you'd been trained in journalism, right? So these different systems have real specialities. So underwriting, and we're seeing that come to life. Risk compliance, and all these different areas.
What about, so again, Watson has had all kinds of applications in healthcare, which you talked a little bit about. We can talk more about financial services, others. This Onstar deal does put it sort of much more directly in the consumer, into the consumer's hands, as it were. Have you got more plans to bring it to the consumer?
I do. I expect that to be happening, though, through lots of clients, right? Although we do have, Watson is available as a platform. That was one of the big things we did, a belief that it should be an open ecosystem, anybody could build on it, and there's dozens of things available. The next layer is we're up to several millions of developers, and then, as I said, through enterprises, which is why I consider us a business platform, it touches their consumers. And so, whether it's Medtronics with diabetes, those products are now all through the FDA, and those will be rolling out now on, predicting hypoglycemia, that kind of thing. So it'll be touching consumers, and I envision it through that. There was I guess maybe interesting one just today. We had done some work with a Grammy record producer, Alex da Kid. I don't know if you know, he does Rihanna, Imagine Dragons, some names that you would know he produces. And he just produced a new record with Watson helping him. And it was out Friday. We didn't say to anyone it was Watson yet. Today it's #1 on Spotify, and it jumped to it's #4 on iTunes New Hits. And the singers are Ellie King, Wiz Khalifa, names you might know. And but what we did, and that's why I say by touching consumers in a different way, what he used Watson for to help on creativity. Watson analyzed, I guess you could call it the world's diary. It was the last 5 years of everything, tweets, what was said, to get a feeling of how the country and people felt. Then did something called Watson Beats on music, on what is it that makes people react emotionally to different sort of music tones. And then another whole thing around, look at the lyrics of all the top songs in the Billboard 100 for as long as we could go, and what makes them hits. And so he did this collaboration, which is a big point of cognitive. It's man and machine together. And so it's very interesting. This song has popped. And so he's going to do a couple more. So this idea to me, which is, I think, a really important point to the purpose of this era as I and we see it, it is augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. And I think that is a really key point. And it has lots of implications.
You're clearly very excited about Watson, cognitive computing.
I'm excited about all we do, but
this is somewhere where IBM's been through successive changes, transformations. You're in the process of another one, and I mean, how big as you right now? I think cognitive computing and cloud computing are about 40% of your revenue. I think heading up towards you think 50%. I think analysts say by the end of next year. Have you gone at a fast enough pace? Is that the kind of you've gone? That's a significant advance in those areas. But is that fast enough, given the way the world is changing, given the competitive pressures?
Yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with what I envision IBM is here to do in this world. And you've heard me, and I think even last year when I was here, I had said, a lot of tech companies come and go, and they can transform through one era, through two. It is something very different to go through 3, 4, and 5 different eras. And I've always said, and I say to our teams, and it's even true with Watson, I say, you can't define yourself by a product. And I believe that belief it's been why we've been able to be 105 years old. We do define ourselves as working on the most challenging business and societal problems. We'll talk a little bit about healthcare. And so but now the how you do it does change. And so the how of this era has a lot to do, and it will make you and be able to solve. I think we'll solve really difficult, unsolvable problems. Cloud will make this ubiquitous, and then with what we call cognitive, you will really get at all this data that is otherwise unharnessable, and you will solve stuff. We're seeing it happen, right, with healthcare, things that cannot be solved. So that part of our mission stays the same, and therefore, there's a lot of things we do to run core franchises of the world, right? I keep repeating, remember, we run 80% of the airline operations that are out there. We run almost all the major banks of the world. Those are not high growth businesses, but those are important businesses that we'll do and bring this to it. So you're right, those businesses are up to 40% $32 billion, and they grew last quarter at 15%. So it's a big number on a big number.
Your transformation has been going on. When you were here last year, you're absolutely right. I looked it up, and you said last year, you told us
You're going to quote me?
Yeah, you said we're a $90 billion company transforming itself.
Yes.
And then we asked you, I think at that point you'd had 14 straight quarters of declining revenues. You've had, and now you just reported just last week, it's now up to 18.
Yeah, I appreciate that that's sort of 54 million short on a $19.2 billion number. So
you think, is this the last quarter? We just had the last quarter of declining revenues?
Well, but this is what I've always said to everyone. Look, and as I said last year even, we've never been about, if those of you that have known IBM a long time, this has never been about just revenue growth to us, because in those same periods that everyone quotes, if you looked at a graph of our margins, they go like this over the last decade. Our revenue has always sort of been like this. But underneath, and this is why, again, I keep impressing why we're around 100 years, the portfolio's completely changed. Jerry just said it's 40%. That was different. So I always say it's like changing the wheels on a train while it's moving in the public eye. Every other competitor that was of that era is gone. They're gone. They're merged. They're separate. They look different. To say this right now as you see what's happening. And so that to me has been what our goal is. Our goal is to keep moving to high value. That's what our shareholders want. So we keep reinventing that, and therefore what everyone also sort of misses in that point is I divested $8 billion of businesses. $8 billion. Currency, worst it's been for the worst prolonged period of time. But those are the right decisions to make. So I make no apologies for them.
Well, look,
we're going to keep doing just like what you said. And you see the progress. We've got a couple 100,000 people working their tails off, and proud of it.
I'm in the newspaper business. We know about the challenges of digital.
I know. I saw your letter.
Digital transformation. So we're not. But it is obviously a process that you're well into. And I'm just wondering if this is now. You think that process of downshifting, as it were, is now over, and you can expect.
Well, clearly we've made a lot of progress, as you see, and it keeps improving.
Let's talk about, again, some of the other issues around AI, or cognitive computing, as you call it. There are a lot of concerns raised by people, not just kind of, if you like, sort of traditional Luddites, as they're sometimes called, but by some serious people, Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, worrying about some of the ethics here, and what does it mean when machines are potentially more intelligent, as intelligent perhaps, or more intelligent ultimately than humans, and people talk about the singularity and the position that we get to from there. What do you think is IBM's role? How do you approach this from IBM's perspective, this potential, this extraordinary potential, which, as you say, potential to do good, whether in healthcare or in the consumer field or whatever, but also creating these machines that have, almost literally minds of their own and the capacity to change our lives and the way that we can change this. How do you approach those ethical issues?
Well, first, I should say, and for everyone, I think this is a really important topic, so we shouldn't shortchange it, and work needs to be done. And this is partly why we formed, there's a non-for-profit organization called Partnership for AI. So it's ourselves, Google, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, as part of this. And others, other universities, other organizations, to study what some of these implications are. But I would back up and make a couple points about it. First, one is people often talk about the fear about jobs around this topic. And all the way to the other end of the spectrum, as you talked about, machines with a mind of their own and what could happen. On the job front, this is a really serious topic, but it is broader. Every era of technology has had an impact on jobs. I don't care if you go to farms, and then there was machine, then people had to learn how to read. And then with the industrial era, then that was the rise of vocational schools. Now, whatever this era will be called, it does, and I'll be this afternoon with the U.S. Secretary of Education, it puts a premium on education, and not just higher education. This is resetting our minds about, with less education, you still have math and technical skills to be able to live in this world. And there are many things we can do about it. We've done a good number of them. And so I think that's a public-private partnership that is really something all of business has to focus on with the government. So that's one end.
Do you think
there's
an obligation I take your point about jobs and every wave of technology?
Well, there are jobs available. It's having the right future skills.
But there is an argument that this wave of technological innovation could be different from the earlier industrial revolutions.
So to the other part,
because
I agree.
Of intelligence.
Yes. However, if you look at the depth of the problems that will be solved and put that up against that, I think you're going to say that this is going to weigh on the positive side. Because I was mentioning to if I might comment on healthcare, right? Because this is really where we'd started with Watson just less than 5 years ago on this, and we started, the hardest spot was oncology. Boy, I fast forward to today. Just last week, I got to do the announcement with Quest Diagnostics on precision medicine and genomics. This makes available to literally almost every patient in the United States that has cancer. And if you have ever known, I'm sure most people have, how many times do you say, how do I know everything? Do I know there's not something else I can do? And so I look at that because what the announcement is Quest Diagnostics serves 50% of the doctors in this country. They serve 70% of the patients in this country with cancer. Your doctor does your tumor, takes a sample, goes to Quest. Watson is then, they do the genetics sequencing. He's reading it, giving the diagnostic, giving the possible treatments. Doctor takes it, looks at it, goes back, and really for people with stage 3 and 4 cancer. Or you look at, I was telling Jerry, the oncology advisor will now treat more patients outside the United States, which have zero hope of ever seeing an oncologist. Zero. If you're in India, there's 1.3 billion people, and there's 1,000 oncologists. I mean, you have no hope. And so these kinds of things I see as so promising of what we will do. So now, go to the other side, Jerry, where you said the downside on this end. Most of what that comes is when people talk about unsupervised learning, which has not yet been solved technically. Most of the machines we talk about and these kinds of things, Watson is trained. So it is trained. It is supervised learning. If you gave these systems like all this data and just said, be a doctor, it wouldn't be possible. Right. They have to be trained. So we're still in the era of things that are trained.
Do you think there's need for government intervention, for legislation, for regulation?
Well, I have to tell you.
To do that kind of thing with machines so that we don't create some of these ethical issues?
Actually, I saw the White House just put out a paper from the Office of Science and Technology. If you haven't looked at it, I think it is very balanced, very good, and it has the policy points called out. So I do think there's intervention on policy and on investment, because if you think of every major era in the past, government has invested in all of these eras, and that's really helped commercialize them too, whether it was landing the man on the moon, whatever it was. And so I think we have an ability that we must work with governments. It's a really important topic.
We've got time for a question, but just quickly before we do, question from the audience, please, if you have one. Put your hand up. But just quickly before you do, privacy. There's another of these ethical issues that people worry. It's become an enormously important topic in the last couple of years.
It's a very good point.
How do you, are we doing the right things, both from a corporate level and from a societal level, to address the concerns that people have? Or are people, more and more people are just scared of what they see as the privacy invasions that go on and actually just want to cut themselves off from this digital revolution?
Yeah, look, I think in those of us, or those of you in the audience, if you have a company or this issue of privacy, it must be an opt-in world. People have to understand they own their data. And we made a really strategic choice with what we did with Watson. And we had no legacy of being a search engine. So when we built it in a way such that if a customer or consumer, you bring your data, customer brings his data, we bring ours in Watson and engines, but the insights are literally separated and go back to that client, and they do not make some big knowledge graph smarter for the next guy. And I think that's got a lot to do with both privacy and then people really owning that those insights are theirs and that data is theirs. And so this is a big deal.
Just in areas of healthcare, particularly genetics in particular, when people discover that they have a genetic predisposition, how should they, employers, it has implications for employers, for people they do business with.
15 years ago, we wrote a letter to all employees that we would never use their genetic sequencing to determine anything with employment. And so these are the kind of policy decisions. We took that position, it may even be more than 15 years ago that we took that position. So I think those are important things.
We've got time for one question. Yes, sir, there.
Ed Frank from Access Innovation. Last year, you're on your way to China right after that conference. I'd like to know if how that developed, and also your concerns about protecting your intellectual property there has also transformed, and how important is China for IBM's future?
Yeah, so, well, I've been there many more times since then, but and today, I'm going to go to Las Vegas. We have a big World of Watson conference with 18,000 people down there. But China's one of the places, by the way, just a week ago, we announced with Walmart a very big project with both cognitive and blockchain, and it's on food safety. It's one of the biggest, obviously, populations in the world. It's on starting with pork, food safety. And so there are many issues there to be solved. So my view, China remains an important market to the IBM company. We've been there since its reopening and even before. And so that it's important. So, and we continue to do work there. It's one of the countries that we're rolling out cancer care, by the way, 21 hospitals already with Watson there. And the banks are big. But China's it obviously has its challenges as a country, right? And what it is it's grappling with and what it's doing there. And intellectual property is something that all of us, I mean, I think intellectual property doesn't pertain to any one country, your protection of it. It's something we take really seriously. Intellectual property, we have a big, I know you're the next speaker, but we've got the largest security business in the enterprise. I was telling Jerry, we look at 20 billion security events a day. And so this protection of not just your intellectual property, by the way, because if you look at your assets that make up 70% of a company's net worth, I mean, it's probably 5% of data that you, I bet, don't have protected in many ways. And so that is bigger than IP, and to me, that's one of the biggest issues about how you protect that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to stop anybody from getting on a plane to Las Vegas. So,
Well,
Ginni, I know that's where you're headed. Please join me in thanking and welcoming
Thank
them.
you. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks very much.